Hello everyone. I just wanted to give you a bit of an update on what's going on and why you haven't seen postings on my YouTube channel for the last week or so. I did send out a message to subscribers, but if you weren't a subscriber and you didn't see that, let me just tell you what's happening. Basically, some of you may know that the writers are on strike. Well, just a week or so ago, the actors also went on strike. If you like specific details about the strike, I know Fran Drescher, the president of the union, has done a number of different press conferences and stuff like that. You could search those and just hear her message about what's going on and what this strike is really about. I can't say that I fully understand all of the details and implications, but you can also go to SAG-AFTRA, that's SAG-AFTRA.org, and there are actually things just on the main page. You don't have to be a member to be able to access information about strike updates and just details of what's going on. It's basically, we are in contract negotiations with the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers. And they are the ones that our contract is with regarding most major film and television work. The Waltons fell under that contract, and initially what we were told as members of the union was that what work we could do, what work we couldn't do, and some of that included not doing promotions for any sorts of shows, past, present, or future, that fell under these contracts. I believe in the strike. I believe in what we're trying to do for our union and for other unions, and so I'm going to honor this strike. If I were in LA, I would be on the picket lines as well. So some of you may or may not care about the strike. You may not agree with it, but it's important to me, and it's important to my fellow actors. You know, the industry in many ways and the jobs have been very good to me. I have loved my work, and I want to support what's happening. Some of the aspects of the strike do have to do with just cost of living increases, like with any other job. What you may not be aware of is really only a very small fraction of actors in the union make a living as actors. Of course, the media always talks about the huge salaries that some actors get as stars of major motion pictures or television series. That was not the case at the time we were doing the Waltons. I think I could pretty safely say that nobody on our show made enough money to retire on. I know particularly for us younger members of the cast signing contracts as children in the 70s, you know, it was, I'm not saying it wasn't a nice paycheck, but relative to the kinds of figures you hear, don't forget about it. Not nowhere near. And yes, there are some royalties that were in place. There was a strike in about 1980, and our show was on strike. The actors, we stopped filming. We didn't go back to work until later than we normally would, and it impacted our season. We did not film a couple of episodes, so the season was shortened. But that was about royalties and about residuals, because the original contracts, they only had to pay through a certain number of residual reruns, and then they never had to pay again. They didn't have to pay foreign residuals beyond a certain point. And cable was just coming into play, so it was a new medium, and there was no contract in place to say whether they had to pay anything if things were on cable. So that contract put in place the fact that we get a nominal amount of money when the show is aired on cable channels. So there are new areas. Streaming has become obviously a huge part of the horizon and what we're dealing with right now with entertainment. And there is really not an effective or any contract in place that fully governs this. So that is one of the things that they're looking at, is should the people who help create that content be compensated for their part in that, or should all of that profit just go to the producers? You may have an opinion on one side or the other, but it's an issue that's being looked at. Another key one is, and I'm saying this from one of the updates from the union website. Protection of our images and performance to prevent replacement of human performances by artificial intelligence technology. So artificial intelligence, AI, is now becoming a huge part in a lot of fields, and there's a lot of questions about it. We don't fully understand what it's going to mean to a lot of industries. There's been talk of, for the writers, that they could ask a computer basically to write a script about, a family in Virginia, and that it could churn it out. Is it a show you would enjoy? Would you like the script? Would you find it believable? I don't know. Is it better than a person, a writer, crafting a story the way our writers did? I don't think so. And I'm not entirely sure of all the ways in which they could replace our likenesses artificially to create new content and potentially not have to pay us for that, because they originally paid for the rights to our image and likeness in regards to that show. So I'm not sure all the implications. I'm not professing to be an expert on this. I'm just saying these are concerns, and that the union understands this, part of the negotiating teams. They understand these issues much better than I do, and they are working to protect us from having our jobs eliminated, as is a concern for people in other industries. The entertainment industry affects not just the writers and the actors, but all the other areas that support the industry. So I think it's important that these issues get worked out. In no way do I mean this to be a griping session, because I'm not. I love what I do, and I've been very fortunate. I've been far more fortunate than a lot of actors who don't have the opportunity or whatever you might call it, the luck, the skill, the whatever, to do a series that runs for as long as ours did. But I did discover once the series was over that, you run into other things. You run into the doors it closes. Typecasting is a real thing, does exist. So, I didn't have the opportunity to go immediately into another series. Then you get into a situation where you are doing a job here or there. And so you don't work all the time. And so for me, when I would get a job, I never knew whatever money I made, even if I thought it was a decent paycheck, and by some other job standard, it might have been a better paycheck, but I didn't know when my next job was going to be. So I didn't know how long that had to last. And so actors deal with that. Or if I went out and did a theater job and I got a chunk of money for maybe 4 weeks of work, didn't know when my next job was going to be. So how long did I have to make that last? So we deal with for most actors, we deal with a lot of the same issues that most workers do. Most actors have day jobs, or they have temp jobs, they have part-time jobs, but they're trying to have a job that's flexible so that when they have an audition, they can go to it. When they get a job, they can do it without having to quit their other job. You can see the issue there. So, so we're just people trying to figure out our lives and trying to find a way to be able to do what we love to do. It's also one of the only jobs that I can think of where you are constantly auditioning for your next job. You go in, you work for a few days, now you're back to auditioning again. Imagine if you work a regular job, if every Monday you had to go in and interview for that job again, and they could say, oh, no, sorry, not this week. We like this candidate better. So there's very little job security in what we do. And I know we chose it. So I'm not blaming anybody. I chose the work, and I have learned what goes with it, and I have found ways to subsidize it when I needed to. And, I considered getting away from it at times. Some actors do, as you've heard in some of my interviews with actors, that they have chosen to change professions because it is a very, very difficult business. So there you go. That's just a little bit of, I think, trying to share with you a bit of what goes on and what's happening for the actors. And I hope it makes sense to you. What does this mean to my channel? Well, at the moment, I have sent in a query to the union to find out whether or not it is okay for me to continue some or all of the type of content that I have been doing on the channel and answering your questions and stuff as they specifically relate to the Waltons and what could be considered promotion for the show. But there's probably other types of content that I could do, but I'm not sure what's of interest to you. I could throw some things out there and see, and if nobody watches it, then I'll know, okay, well, they're not interested in that. And I know that your primary interest is in the behind the scenes of the Waltons, and that's the one thing that I'm not sure if I can do right at the moment. I have some stockpiled segments, so as soon as I get an okay, I can roll some of those out because they were kind of there and already filmed. So they're waiting. And in the meantime, there's things, let's see, I made some notes here. I could talk about theaters. Okay, theater contracts aren't being negotiated. They're not on strike. So Richard Thomas and his tour of To Kill a Mockingbird will continue. Good time as an actor to be doing theater. But I've done a lot of theater. I worked with a theater company in Canada for 8 years. I did a lot of behind the scenes stuff on that. Independent films and TV shows and some things like that. I could talk about my work on that. I could talk about different aspects of being an actor and what's involved, or my writing and how one develops a story, or things like that. So just maybe put some notes in the comments below and tell me if any of those sorts of topics appeal to you, or if you have some other idea that I might consider. I'm game to see what we can do here that might be of interest. And maybe I just do some of these, and those of you who are interested in them, watch them, and those of you who aren't interested in that topic, pass on it, and we'll just make our way through this period of time. I have no idea how long this strike is going to last, but it's going to take as long as it takes for there to be an agreeable settlement. And I think the actors are willing to hold strong because it's our future. All right, thank you very much. I hope this update made sense. I'll try to answer more questions, but I'm not as well informed, and what I really don't want to do is get into a debate with people about your opinions about it. I understand you may have different views, you may be dealing with different things in your own life, but we're doing the best we can as actors to make our way through this ourselves. I hope that I will be able to put something up again here soon, whether it deals with the Waltons or whether it deals with some of these other topics I've been talking about. We shall see. In the meantime, thank you for watching.